But yeah, for those of you that kind of don't know my history with this character, Valdar here, initially, way back in Final Fantasy XI, when I was over at Neon's house, this was 17, 18 years ago, maybe longer, I had never heard of Final Fantasy XI at this point until that specific day. So I go over there and I was like, whoa, and a Final Fantasy MMO? Really? So this was in 2002, had to have been. Like 2002, early 2003. Because 11 had just came out in America, roughly. So basically, what ends up happening is I make a character on their account. They let me. And I made a male Hume named Valdar. He was a warrior. I got him roughly to level 22, roughly. And I got bored. I got really bored. And I also noticed that there was never a healer around when you needed one. And I really wanted to play a Mithra. You know, because I'd see them and they all, you know, it kind of tickled my fancy, as it were. So I eventually deleted Val. Well, let me slow down for a second here. Because I made Valdar on Vell's account, and then on December 15th, 2003, that's when I got my own account. And I remember that day vividly. So I wanted to use the name Valdar again. I wanted to get that character. But unfortunately, I couldn't, because even though the character was deleted from Vell's account, the name hadn't been released yet. So I ended up making a character named Valdar. You know, it sounds the same, so, you know, whatever. That's what I did. But then, that's when I ultimately got bored and decided to delete him completely. And that was ultimately when I made Serenia. So, anyway, fast forward a few months later, I, for whatever reason, felt bad for deleting my original Final Fantasy XI character. Because I'm a helpless romantic or I'm overly sentimental, I don't know, what have you, whatever the case may be, I decided to bring him back. So I made him as a what we called in 11, a mule. A place where you can store gear and whatnot. Now, keep this in mind as well, that with Final Fantasy XI, it was $12.95 a month, plus an additional $1 for every other character you made. And you would have to pay that extra $1 monthly. So that kind of explains why the whole concept of deleting characters, making new ones, yada yada yada. So eventually, a few months after I had remade Valdar again, I deleted him for another character, this time a Hume female that I named Relka, or as Vell likes to call her, Big Tits, but whatever. So eventually, again, I felt guilty for deleting Valdar, so I remade him again! Only to delete him a few months later. Again. Poor Valdar, man! So, eventually... You know, because Vell would tease me constantly over the years. And a few years ago, I think it was just during Heavensward... No, not Heavensward. Yeah, Heavensward. Heavensward. She finally convinced me to make Valdar on 14, because I don't have to worry about the whole $1 per extra character thing. You can have 8 characters per server up to a maximum of 50 characters. So eventually, I made him, you know, and, you know, there you go. That's the story of Valdar. But I only originally had planned on just making him and leaving him here, right? And, you know, just leaving him level 1. I made him and all this other stuff. But as time went on, Vell eventually encouraged me to work on him. She even bought me this stupid outfit right here and said, you gotta use it, you know, because playing onto the whole Native American thing, she called him Tatanka all the damn time. You know, so I was like, fine. I leveled him to like 51 on Warrior, but I don't like tanking, so... I even have a narrative in my head for that, because it was around the start, you know how at the end of Heavensward, towards the beginning of Stormblood, you come across Gosetsu, you know, around that point. So, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, So he sees Gosetsu's fighting style, gets inspired. He goes to Gosetsu and asks him all about it, and trains under him. Yada yada yada. Samurai. So there you go. That's how Valdar became a samurai. Even though out of character, it's because samurai was the only melee class that I really know how to play at this point, because I haven't touched ninja since Heaven's Ward. So yeah, and I didn't want him to be yet another white mage like 90% of my other alts. So yeah. That's the history of Valdar for you. Oh my god. Poor Valdar. Actually, he even had a stint as the saddest Al-Ra you've ever seen. I'm not even joking, man. He looked so sad. Like it, and the worst part is, it made Vell tease the whole Native American thing even more, because the way that Valdar looked as an Al-Ra in that brief stint where he was an Al-Ra, it looked kind of like that one. Have you guys seen that one commercial with the guy throws like a plastic bag out the window or something, and then it rolls at this Native American's feet? Then the Native American dude just looks real sad, and a tear drops down his eye. It made Vell start teasing me that it was in reference to that, and I'm like, oh. You know? Yeah. So eventually I used another one of Valdar's Fantasias, because he had 2 or 3 free ones, and I turned him back into what he is now. Which is a Highlander here male. Yeah, he's got such a weird storied past. He really does.